record. Okay, I think we're live now with the recording. And let me pull this up. Very cool. Um, and so, guys, we are going to chat tonight about an issue that most of us have gone through during this pandemic. It's called depression, anxiety, mental health, right? Has been a major concern through this pandemic. There's been an argument throughout the whole pandemic about closing up shops, closing up business, making everyone stay home, isolating everyone, and there's two sides of that argument. One side is we got to stop this virus from spreading around, and to do that we need to have folks stay at home and not be exposed to this virus to slow down the spread. On the other hand, there is a consequence to being stuck at home and being isolated with that, right? There's a consequence to that. What is that consequence, guys, of being stuck at home and isolated? Type in the chat box. What is the consequences of being stuck at home and isolated with that? Mark and Karen says depression, being alone, stir crazy, huh? Antisocial. Sheila says eating too much. Judy says too much time to think about negative stuff, family issues. Lynn says her car battery died from not driving it. Yeah, Lorna says loneliness. Mabel says loss of social contact. Dorothy, boredom and overeating. Wow. Karen says 4 car batteries died. Lack of social activity. Boy, these car batteries. I never knew that dead car batteries was one of the victims of the pandemic. Yeah. Bad habits, less physical activity, weight gain. Yes, you missed the gym. I missed the gym too. I was at the gym several times a week before the pandemic. Um, Fear of the unknown. Lots of reasons for depression, social isolation, anxiety. Barbara missed people connection. Watching too much TV, Karen. What do you watch, Karen, on TV? Losses, too much sitting. Okay, is there Korean drama? Oh my word. Korean drama. Okay, the pandemic allows for more Korean drama. All right, that's interesting. Is that a bad thing or a good thing? Could be a good thing to have time for Korean drama. Develop an interest in walking. Too much social media, says Barb. Yes. Patricia lost 10 pounds because, oh my gosh, Patricia, you're one of the few that have lost weight. How many of us have gained weight from the pandemic? Yes, Patricia, what is your secret? Most of us have gained weight. You know what COVID-19 stands for, right? It's really the 19 pounds that we've gained from sitting at home. With that, Vienna lost weight. Okay, some of you guys lost weight. A lot of you have gained weight. Yes, Mark and Karen says the car battery provides power for the car security system that draws power from the battery. That's true. I didn't think of that. Barb lost muscle, lethargy. You know, one of the health consequences of the pandemic isn't necessarily just the weight gain and the physical deconditioning, but obviously mental health, right? Mental health. I don't know if you have read what I've read on mental health, and It is the fact that we are seeing last year an increase in suicide attempts, an increase in suicide attempts. We've seen an increase, obviously, in those who are depressed, those who feel lonely. We have seen an increase in alcoholism. We've Billy says an increase in gun purchases. Yes. We've seen an increase in domestic violence. In domestic violence, because prior to the pandemic, husbands and wives didn't spend 24 hours together prior to the pandemic, right? Parents and children didn't spend 24 hours together all the time. And so, when you're at school, when you're at work, and you spend most of your days there, and you go home, right? And you go home, not a problem with uh, with spending a few hours in the evening, having dinner, going to bed, right? But now that you're spending 24 hours with somebody, 7 days a week, sometimes, sometimes, those little things kind of irritate each other that normally isn't an issue. But because you're spending 24 hours with someone, those little things become big things. And so it ends up being big issues, a disruptor of relationships, right? 24/7 with a spouse could be either very good or very bad. Right? Spending 24/7 with a spouse could be either very good or very bad. um, and so definitely the pandemic, guys, have really brought on these environmental situations that contribute to mental health and depression. But my question to you is this: is yeah, it is hard to get medical care, right, Mabel? It is hard to get medical care. I'm a believer in the future of telemedicine, right? You being able to speak with me just over video on a Zoom call, on a video call like this, and getting your healthcare needs taken care of. I do believe in that. Of course, it's not for every visit. I mean, you can't do a physical exam over Zoom, right? But there are many conditions and stuff that we can address over Zoom, um, or over some video conference to take care of your needs, including refilling prescriptions and reviewing your lab results and things of that sort. Um, but what I have known is this, and let me ask you this: is anxiety, depression, and mental health purely due to environmental factors? Or is there a possibility that depression, anxiety, and mental health issues could be contributed also by some type of chemical imbalance, some type of hormonal imbalance in our body, in our brains, and things of that sort? What do you guys think? Um, what do you think is a bigger factor of depression? Life and life's happening to us, or chemistry, like something off, going off, an imbalance, or some kind of deficiency, right, in our body? Both, not sure. Chemistry, both. Life, both. Both. You guys are good. Yes. Yes. Judy's case, can it be inherited? Yes. Can it be life? It can be life. One of the interesting I've seen is when I was taking care of patients, and I took care of patients for close to 20 years. When I was taking care of patients, sometimes what I found really interesting is sometimes There are folks who would come to our office, and I realized that externally, life is going pretty well. Their mortgage is paid off. They have money in the bank. They have a good job or a good business. They don't have financial needs, but they come in, and the major thing on their mind is issues with depression and anxiety. And so it always brings a question to my mind: is depression and anxiety simply, you know, life, or is there something else going on that contributes to it, right? Susan says, does COVID virus cause depression chemically? Being infected causes depression. Being stuck at home causes depression, Susan. Being isolated causes depression from COVID, right? Loss of a spouse leads to, long term, and can lead to depression as well, especially when you've been married a long time. But sometimes it's like there are folks who have everything and yet still feel depressed, yet still feel, anxiety. And and so absolutely right, Amy. Is it situational depression, or is it organic? Right? Is it a situational depression thing, or is it organic? And that's what we want to delve into today, because obviously, the situational depression is COVID, but sometimes there's more to it than just COVID, right? Now, do you know what type of hormone deficiencies or excess or chemical imbalance lead to depression? Does anyone know? Is there a specific chemical you can name that leads to depression? Right? Ooh, I see like two serotonins in here already. Right? Susan says, if you do not have depression, but doctors want to prescribe antidepressants to address brain fog or fatigue. I see. I see. Vitamin D, serotonin. Let me ask you, does depression, how does depression present itself? What are some of the symptoms of depression? Is it just feeling depressed, or are there other symptoms that are associated with depression? Fatigue, IBS, lack of energy. Judy says tears, tears, tears. Sleeping a lot, okay. And cannot sleep, okay. Lethargic, feeling hopeless, no affect, lethargy, no energy, self pity, no desire to do anything, not interested in life, not interested in activities. Yeah, you guys are absolutely correct. And it's some appetite changes, right? Either overeating or undereating, right? Are symptoms of depression. And and it's interesting because oftentimes we can be depressed without even realizing that we're depressed, because we have other symptoms that we have not associated to depression. We have maybe a loss of desire to do activities, a loss of desire to go out of the house, oversleeping, right? And these can all be symptoms of depression, guys, that may not be easily recognized as depression, right? These are all symptoms of depression with that. Close to yourself, off from friends and family. So, yeah, just staying away from, closing yourself off from friends and family are all symptoms of depression, right? And so sometimes it's not very obvious. But I'm glad we're bringing all these symptoms up: fear, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, all associated with it. I have spoken to several people in the last week that gave me every other symptom they have except for depression. They don't say they're depressed, but but everything else they say points to depression. You know what I mean? Uh, Withdrawing from life. Lorna says, "Do you, Dr. T, get depressed?" I don't know. I'm kind of wired all the time, so I I don't remember if I ever get depressed. I just get weird, insane in the membrane is what I get, as opposed to depression. But I'm sure, PTL, high on life. Yeah, rather high on life than CBD, right? I'm just kidding. You can't get high on CBD. Um, so again, think of the symptoms you've had over the last month, right? You may not call it depression. You may not call it depression, but think of the symptoms that your family, your friends, your neighbors have spoken to you about, and they may not call it depression, but all these symptoms we listed, right, are possibly symptoms of depression. Now, let's talk a little bit about chemical imbalance. Depression comes from where? Depression comes from up here, right? Depression comes from up here. And we know that the brain makes these, we call it neurotransmitters, right? These hormones that activate the brain and do certain things. There are four major neurotransmitters in our brain. There's a lot more than that, but four major ones in the brain. And the ones that you guys have mentioned is serotonin. What happens when we don't have enough serotonins in our brain? What happens, guys, when we don't have enough serotonin in our brain? Anyone know? When there's a lack of serotonin? Mood changes? What kind of mood changes? Right? What kind of mood changes? When there's not enough serotonin, we get depressed. Goes dark, huh? Ooh, I hope my brain doesn't go dark. When there's not enough serotonin, we get depressed. How do we know that? Well, most of the antidepressants that we prescribe, have you heard of Prozac? Have you heard of Paxil? Right? Most of the antidepressants that we prescribe, all they do, guys, is they build up your brain's serotonin level. Celexa, right? Yeah, these antidepressants, the popular ones you hear about, all they do is that they build up your brain's serotonin level to help with depression. Why do they take so long to take effect? Yeah, they do take long to take effect. It's a slow buildup. It's a slow buildup of serotonin with that. Okay, and so that is, ooh, Mark, 7 small molecules in the brain. That's right. There's a good number of small molecules in the brain. We'll just talk about the most popular four, right? So number one is serotonin. A low serotonin level in the brain leads to depression. Now, name me another popular neurotransmitter. Another popular neurotransmitter. Name me another one. What are the other ones? Yes, dopamine. Okay, dopamine. What does dopamine do? What does dopamine do? Anyone know? What does dopamine do? What is the purpose of dopamine? Does it make you dopey? Does it dope you out? Not really. Makes you happy with a question mark. Makes you happy with a question mark. Dopamine, not fight or flight. Fight or flight is norepinephrine. When he says wake you up, well, there's a lot of stuff that wakes you up. Dopamine is the pleasure center. Dopamine gives you a pleasure. When your dopamine receptors are stimulated, you get super happy. It's the brain's pleasure center. Uh, so, how many of you guys are like me where you enjoy a slice of chocolate cake? Type in yes if you enjoy a slice of chocolate cake. How many of you guys? Okay, okay. All right, Godiva, Godiva, huh? All right, we got chocolate lovers here, right? We got chocolate lovers here. Yes. And so when you take that first bite of your chocolate cake, that first bite, how does it feel, that first bite of that chocolate, that piece of chocolate slice? How does it feel? What does it feel like? Can you describe that feeling? Can you type out that feeling? Heaven, heaven, pleasurable, accelerating. Yeah, delicious. That's dopamine, guys. You're feeling dopamine, right? Pleasure, euphoria. That's dopamine. That's all it is. That's soothing, right? So you've just described your dopamine interaction. That's it. It's that desire for more, that pleasure center, right? You want to purr. I don't know how to purr. I can't roll my tongue like purr. Even if I tried, I can't roll my tongue. But yeah, you want to purr. So now you know what dopamine is. Does that make sense to you guys? Dopamine is the pleasure sensation. That's dopamine. As a cat. Yes. So dopamine is basically that purr, that heavenly, sensation. And and yes, yes, yes. Ice cream. Taste buds. Yes, yes, causing your brain to generate. Yes, your taste buds. Yes, goes to your brain to generate the dopamine and the dopamine rush, right? Do you know what else binds the dopamine? You know what else binds the dopamine, guys? Besides the yummy food, what else does binds the dopamine? Yeah. Smells? Okay. Huh. Okay. What else? Coffee, babies and puppies. What else binds the dopamine here? Hmm. Reward. Yeah. So here's what else binds the dopamine. Karen says sex. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Mabel says touch, music. So the other stuff that binds the dopamine is cocaine, heroin, right? That's why they're illegal drugs, because once you're addicted to that pleasure, it's an addiction. So you want more cocaine, you want more heroin, you want more, opioids, right? Opioids bind to dopamine, and because we always want that pleasure, right? I mean, I wouldn't mind eating a slice of chocolate cake every hour. Why? Because I get that wow, 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 on an hourly basis. And so those who are addicted to cocaine, heroin, the reason they're addicted is because of dopamine. Does that make sense? The reason they're addicted is because of dopamine. It's that pleasure sensation that causes the addiction, right? So What else causes? What else binds the dopamine? And you guys know besides narcotics? What else? What else binds the dopamine? The lack of dopamine is not good either. The lack of dopamine means your life is blah. There's no pleasure, right? And a big lack of dopamine leads to Parkinson's disease, which is why the medications we give for Parkinson's disease is medications that build up dopamine levels, right? And seeing my grandkids. So the other stuff that binds the dopamine that gives you this pleasure sensation is sugar. Sugar. It makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, why do you think we have dessert? We have dessert because we get that pleasure from the dessert, right? Sugar. It's sugar. Why do you think desserts are sweet? Desserts are sweet because it's the sugar that releases and promotes the dopamine that gives us that pleasure sensation that goes along with with pleasure dessert, right? Yes. Mark says neurotransmitter dopamine response to sexual stimulation. Okay. It's also addictive. Yes, sugar is very addictive. How many of you guys know that sugar is addictive? Right? Sugar is so addictive that 2 out of 3 Americans are either diabetic or pre-diabetic, right? Sugar is so addictive that in America, 2 out of 3 Americans are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. That tells you how addicted we are, right? 2 out of 3 of us, guys, with that. And you know who else knows that sugar is addictive? You know who else knows that sugar is addictive? The companies that make the sugar. The food industry, yes. Hummingbirds, yes, right? The food industry knows that sugar is addictive. This is why this is why they sneak in sugar into the label and they don't call it sugar. They call it other things, right? Because they don't want you looking at the label and saying, "Oh, sugar is the first thing on the list." I don't want that. So instead of putting sugar on the label, what other words do they use? Yes, yes, yes. Sucrose, fructose, corn syrup, right? Maltose, anything that ends with os, right? So rather than calling it sugar, the food industry simply changes the name to kind of fake you out, right? Where you don't see the word sugar in it, but there's sugar in it because they want you back buying the same foods over and over because of that addiction to sugar that promotes dopamine, right? That dopamine sensation. Processed foods. Mabel says like tobacco companies and nicotines. Yes, yes, sweeteners. Okay. So that is the second largest, not that's the second most popular neurotransmitter in the brain. So again, the first neurotransmitter is serotonin. The lack of serotonin leads to depression. The second neurotransmitter is dopamine, which creates that pleasure sensation, right? So we need dopamine to enjoy life, but at the same time, dopamine can certainly get you addicted because of the sugar content and it's why narcotics, right, are very addictive. It's why cocaine and heroin is very addictive because of that dopamine release. Okay, so those are two. What is the third? Name me the third neurotransmitter. The lack of dopamine. The lack of dopamine causes problems like Parkinson's disease, uh, anhedonia, I think, the lack of pleasure, restless legs, right? Lack of dopamine can cause those type of problems. Let's talk about another neurotransmitter. How many of you guys have heard of, let me see, of GABA? GABA, GABA. How many of you guys have heard of this neurotransmitter? GABA. No? No? Okay. How many of you guys have heard of a medication called gabapentin? The other name for it is Neurontin. Gabapentin. So a few of you guys have heard of gabapentin. It's a prescription that we write. And Judy says people with pain. Yes, the lack of GABA leads to chronic pain. Leads to chronic pain, especially nerve pain. Yes, nerve pain. Treated with Lyrica. Karen's dog gets the medication. Okay. Fibromyalgia. Yep, fibromyalgia. Burning tongue syndrome. What the? That's a syndrome, Amy? Burning tongue syndrome. That is a neuropathy, nerve pain, right? That is a nerve pain. And yes, I would not want burning tongue syndrome. That does not sound very pleasant, right? And so I don't think I've diagnosed anyone with burning tongue syndrome, but I'm glad you brought it up. So gabapentin, right? Gabapentin, the lack of adequate GABA can lead to chronic pain, especially neuropathic pain, neuropathy pain, right? Burning symptoms and things of that sort. So gabapentin is another huge neurotransmitter that's in the brain, and we treat that by giving, patients gabapentin for the lack of GABA, right? Inadequate GABA with that. All right, so we've gone through 3 neurotransmitters so far. By the way, did you know that chronic pain and pain in general is on the rise over the years? I've seen more patients over the years with just pain, chronic pain over time, and it's an epidemic. Yeah. Did you know that depression has increased over the years? Even without the pandemic, we're seeing an increase in depression over the years. Did you realize there's an increase in depression and mental health issues and anxiety with or without the pandemic? Even without the pandemic, we've seen a huge rise over the years, and I've seen it in my own patients. Yes, more people do talk about it as well. Yes, chronic pain's on the rise, depression's on the rise. So lots of these issues, mental health issues, is on the rise. There's a there is a fourth. Oh, Karen says that pain could be from magnetic field deficiency syndrome. Very cool. Mabel says, what is the cause? Why is there a rise? Let me ask you this, guys. Let's before I explain to you the cause behind many of this, there's one more neurotransmitter I want to bring to your attention. Have you heard of a neurotransmitter called? I'm going to type it out for you. Have you heard of a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine? Have you ever heard of a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine? Anyone? No? Which came first, the chicken or the egg, the pain or the depression? Yeah, it could be a loop, right? No one's heard of acetylcholine, huh? Okay, yes, yes, yes. Okay. All right. Oh, holy cow. A lot of you have heard acetylcholine. What have you heard about it? What have you heard about it? Acetylcholine. What have you heard about acetylcholine? Anything in particular? What happens when you don't have enough acetylcholine? Myasthenia gravis, okay. It fires things up. Nerve impulse. What is a diagnosis we would give a patient when they don't have acetylcholine? What is a diagnosis we would give a patient? Have you ever heard of a medication called Aricept? Aricept. Anyone heard of that? Aricept or donazepam? Aricept or donazepam? Yes, it is an Alzheimer's medication. FDA approved for Alzheimer's. And what this medication does is that it increases the level of acetylcholine in your brain. So a deficiency of acetylcholine leads to memory loss. A deficiency of acetylcholine leads to memory loss. Isn't that crazy? A deficiency of acetylcholine leads to memory loss, and which is why these Alzheimer's medications we prescribe boost up your acetylcholine level to help uh, improve, right? To help improve your memory. How do you spell that? Hold on, I'm gonna spell it for you here. Can you guys see me type when I type something? Let me see. Uh, uh, hold on. Let me hold on here. Everyone meeting acetyl. Okay, tell me if you can see this. Can you see that now?
Yeah.
You can see it? Okay,
Yes.
good. All right, acetylcholine.
Crap.
It's the way that it's typed. A deficiency of that leads to memory loss, which is why we have an Alzheimer's medication that boosts your acetylcholine levels. Okay? Now, did you know that Alzheimer's and dementia is on the rise over the years, right? It's the number 3 cause of death in Orange County. I believe it's the number 3 cause of death in California, actually. Right behind number 1, which is what is the number 1 cause of death? You wouldn't know. People are living longer, partially. The problem with that, the number 1 cause of death is heart disease. Yes, the number 1 cause of death is heart attacks. What is the number 2 cause of death? Does anyone know? Does anyone know the number 2 cause of death? Any thoughts on that? I see lungs. Yeah, I asked this in a crowd one time. I think it was at Norman Murray Community Center, or Florence Sylvester Community Center. I asked this to the group that was there, right? The top 3 leading causes of death, and they all got number 1 right. It's a heart attack. And when we got to number 2, there was a couple sitting there. The man raised his hand and he said marriage.
Oh, yuck.
He said marriage as a cause of death. And so I don't think he made it home that day. I think he could have been a part of the statistic of death that day. But the number 2 cause of death is cancer. Number 2 cause of death is cancer. Number 3 cause of death is Alzheimer's. And you may ask yourself, how does Alzheimer's kill, right? Why does somebody die from Alzheimer's? Obviously, you don't die from not remembering. I mean, not remembering doesn't cause you to drop dead. But what happens is that over time, initially, your symptoms may be mild, where where you may forget a name or a word or things of that sort. You may walk into a room and wondering why you're there in that room. Uh, but over time, as this plaque, the Alzheimer's plaque builds up in our brain, the memory symptom gets worse, where you forget to turn off the stove, or you put your keys, into the refrigerator, or things shouldn't belong the way it does, and you forget conversations that you had 5 minutes ago. And as things progress, you don't remember how to take care of yourself, how to put on your clothes, how to cook, how to do the checkbook. And as things progress, you don't remember that you're hungry. And so you don't eat well and you forget taking your pills, right? And your blood pressure gets out of whack and your diabetes gets out of whack. And over time, as things progress, you don't walk anymore. Now you're bedbound. And really, it's being bedbound, not being able to take care of yourself. Over time, your body gets deconditioned, you get bed sores, you no longer speak, and an infection gets you, or it's that debilitation from being bedbound, right? Getting UTIs and things of that sort. That's what kills a person with Alzheimer's over time. That's why Alzheimer's is the number 3 cause of death with that. By the way, you guys know that I work in the field of Alzheimer's research, right? We do completely no cost consultations on video. If you're ever interested in Alzheimer's research, clinical trials, you can just contact me, or call the office and say, I want an appointment, a video chat with Dr. Trin, right? You can do that if you wanted to check your brain out. We do that no cost for you. Um, but anyway, these Alzheimer's is on the rise. That's a neurotransmitter in the brain, acetylcholine. Chronic pain is on the rise. That's a neurotransmitter up here in the brain, right? That is uh, the deficiency of that can cause chronic pain. Depression is on the rise, right? Depression is on the rise, and that is a neurotransmitter, serotonin, right? Um, Conditions like Parkinson's disease is on the rise, and that's connected to dopamine and the lack of dopamine, right? And things of that sort. Am I seeing a connection with COVID virus to brain function? 100%. I'm seeing a connection uh, with uh, with that. Barb says, I'm going to have a consult with you. Okay. If you guys are interested in a consult with me, just a one-on-one video chat about your brain and memory, you can just call the office and say, I want to consult with Dr. Trin. And that's all you need to do. I'll give you the office number here on there. And you can just say, I want to consult on to check out my brain, right? Uh, Clinical trials and things of that sort is what I do pretty much all day with that. It's my passion to do that. Now, the 4 neurotransmitters that we talked about, they all affect mental health, don't they? They all affect mental health. That includes depression, that includes chronic pain, which leads to depression. That includes memory loss, that leads to dementia and Alzheimer's and all those things. Let me ask you this. Why are we losing these neurotransmitters in our brains? Why are they not working as effectively as they could be? Is it because we're getting older? Is it because of lifestyle? Right? Why is that? Right? Joanna says inflammation, computers, stress, sugar, inheritance. Right? Why is that, guys? All right. How many of you guys were on our leaky gut lecture? Was that last week? How many of you guys were on our leaky gut lecture last week? Sedentary lifestyle, right? So let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Where are these neurotransmitters being made? Where are these neurotransmitters being made? Last week, we talked about this epidemic of how our gut right, is in trouble. Our gut is no longer doing its job because we destroy the health of our gut. We destroy the good bacteria that lives in our gut, right? And we also talked about the function of these bacteria and what they do. They basically help to protect the gut lining. They help to produce proteins and vitamins and things of that sort. Uh, and so they help to keep our gut healthy from being leaky, right? From being leaky. And when the gut breaks down because of our lifestyle and our diet and things of that sort, it causes problems, right? With that. So I'm going to share my screen a little bit, and I'm going to ask you a question. These four neurotransmitters we talked about, right? There's serotonin, acetylcholine, dopa, GABA, these different neurotransmitters that we talked about. Let me just throw one out there. Where's serotonin made? Where's serotonin made, right? Is it made up in the brain? Uh, right? How do we make serotonin? Because we have seen that the lack of serotonin leads to depression. We have seen an epidemic of depression over the years, even without COVID, right? Even without COVID, depression is on the rise. Uh, Look at you guys here answering these questions. Let me share my screen with you, and let's see if we can answer that question together with that. All right. Do you guys see my screen? Everyone see my screen here? Let me see. I'll pull the chat box up to the side here. I'll turn this down and you guys can see my screen. Good, good, good. So let's just ask a question. Let's just ask a simple question, right? Where is serotonin made? So let me ask that question here. Where is serotonin produced? Okay. And so if I ask that question, where is serotonin produced? We can go to medical news today, function uses, where study sciences. Let's pull up one of these things. Hey, Betty, Nurse Betty is here. Yay. Where is serotonin produced? All right. Serotonin, guys, is made in your digestive system. Serotonin is made in your digestive system. So serotonin, 90% of serotonin is produced in your gut. 90% of what causes depression, right, is produced in your gut. Isn't that crazy? And if 90% of serotonin comes from your gut, and you have a problem with your gut called leaky gut, an inflamed gut, what that means is that the serotonin is not being produced when your gut is not functioning correctly. And so if you have a problem with leaky gut or an inflamed gut or poor gut health, you are not making serotonin adequately. And if you're not making serotonin adequately, what happens up here? What symptoms do you get, guys? What symptoms do we get without adequate serotonin? Right? The lack of serotonin causes depression. That's right. That's right. The lack of serotonin leads to depression. And so do you see that depression isn't always just external environment and life? Depression is linked to serotonin, and serotonin is linked to your gut health. As a matter of fact, it's not just serotonin that's made in your gut. Many of the neurotransmitters needed in your brain is made in your gut. Many of the neurotransmitters that is required in your brain is made and produced by the bacteria in your gut. So when we don't have a healthy gut, right? When we don't have a healthy gut, it leads to an unhealthy brain, including depression. Are you starting to see the link here? That mental health is a chemical imbalance as well as life. But I'm trying to link the chemical imbalance for you, right? So oftentimes there are certain foods that you eat that can promote depression in the long run because it promotes basically poor gut health that leads to depression and anxiety and things of that sort, right? We can eat foods that lead to depression, that leads to anxiety because we destroy our gut health. And so our gut doesn't make the neurotransmitters that's needed for our brains. Make sense, guys? All right. I am, yeah, I hope that makes sense to everyone with that. And so the answer to depression, is it life or is it environment or is it chemical imbalance? Obviously it is both. And even serotonin, right? That is the cause behind depression. You can see the link to it with your gut with that. Okay, guys, we are up on our time. We are up on our time. So I hope you guys learned something tonight. You're welcome to unmute. I'm going to exit everyone here. And yes, avoid sugar, minimize all the junk food, minimize all that junk. I'm moving on to a Bible study that I have right now. So
Thanks, Dr. Trend, for this. Thank you.
all right, guys, I'll see you.
Thank you very much. You're
Next-
amazing.
Thank you. I
Thank
enjoy this
you.
every week. Thank you.
Thank
I'll
you.
see you next Thursday, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Have a great
Okay.
week,
Bye.
Dr. Trent.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you.
See you
Bye.
later.
See you later. Thank you.
See you later, alligator.
After a while, crocodile.
All the wild crocodile.
Toodaloo to tofu.
I've never heard of that one.
It's the Asian version.
The tofu version. I like that.
I like that.
See you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Where does it go?